What's going on, guys? Spud here, and welcome to episode 16 of the Roundup. In today's episode, we're going to talk about Challengers Champs and how Law Gaming managed to beat Omit Brooklyn in a best of 7 to win Challengers Champs for 2024. We're also going to be talking about the Esports World Cup in two different ways. So we're going to talk about Call of Duty and the Rostermania Drama now that the team locks in. And we're also going to be talking about CS for the first time in a while, as NAVI did win the Esports World Cup for CS. Just as a thank you so much. Obviously, we got the most likes we've had on one episode of the Roundup. I loved making last week's episode. There is actually going to be an episode next week, so this week's episode we're going to have a week off, and then we'll be back for our predictions for the Esports World Cup when we've got a bit more info of how everything will work and what the groups are officially, because we've kind of just got projections at the moment because we're not 100% sure due to the fact of LA Gorillas not being there. So yeah, there's a lot to go through, but it should be a good one. And yeah, obviously subscribe if you are new. We are trying to hit 250 subscribers probably by the end of the year. Let's be realistic here. 250 subs by the end of the year is the aim. Let's see if we can hit that. We've actually been streaming a little bit more on Twitch as well. I can put my Twitch link in the description. We don't stream much. It's just whenever I feel like streaming, to be honest, rather than having like a schedule now. And yeah, let's just get straight into episode 16. As I said, we've got a lot to go through. So we're going to start with challenges. And we obviously had our grand finals, which was Law Gaming versus Omit Brooklyn. And it was a 4-3 win for Law Gaming. And you can see that all these players played in the CDL last year or this year at some point. But the reason that this win was really impressive from Law Gaming is because they won 3 search and destroys. That should be 250, 227, 250. But they didn't just win these search and destroys, like they absolutely dominated in search and destroy. And they obviously won a hard point as well. And these are the stats for the series. So everyone played pretty well. Purge, a bit iffy, but not too bad. Paul X was actually given the Challengers Champs MVP. Obviously, he was in the league last year with the London Royal Ravens. But yeah, this was actually a really good grand final. And it was ultimately Law Gaming, and RCT's put in his bio that he's a 2.5 world champion now, because obviously he's won the world championship with E United and Atlanta FaZe, and he's won Challengers Champs, which obviously isn't the same, but he's put it as a 2.5 in his bio on Twitter. If we actually look at the stats, like for these maps, you can see that they're pretty close. I mean, Paul X had a really good search there. You know, the hard point that Law won, Purge dropped a point for. It's stuff like this, which is why he's like, you can see why Vegas got rid of him. But yeah, the final map, the search and destroy, kills wise, it wasn't even like, it was quite close, but Law got it done in 9 rounds. We're going to show you the final round now. Of the match.
Difficult now for Law, but RCD should have at least spotted Awakening on the exit. 2v2, Omen Brooklyn trying to clutch up and stay alive.
Clean shots from RCDs. Now it's just down to Cammy. Has to be a 1v2. RCD's going to play this alongside Paul. They're making sure there's no late wrap. Now it's just down to can they isolate. Here's the first cross. Clean shots. Oh, and Cammy will drop. How about it? Lord Gaming find themselves in every single grand finals. But it's this version of the roster that are champions at the end of the season.
And that is the perfect definition of S&D wins you championships. You come out in this best of 7 versus a squad who were outstanding all weekend long in S&D.
And ultimately, like they said, S&Ds do win your championships, and Law Gaming do take the championship. Obviously, Turiel, Uli, and Paul X were all hugging each other. RCTs was flipping off the opponents. But yeah, really good series to watch, actually. Now, if we move on with challenges, this was after the group phase, this was the bracket. Obviously my prediction of an Omit EU victory hasn't happened. I did have Omit Brooklyn being in the grand finals, and losing, so at least I got that right. But this was the bracket for the event. Obviously where my first cam is just FC Black and Omit EU. Yeah, Omit were quite disappointing, to be honest, Omit EU, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with Hixie now. Obviously, you know, I can't believe he actually had a full year in challenges. Obviously, visa issues can be a reason, and now there's a chance he moves to Canada for next season, so that he's an NA challenges player, which means if he has a good challenges split, he's got more chance of getting into the league because the cheaper orgs, the poverty orgs, let's say, will not have to deal with any visa issues. But just in general, like, obviously 3 teams were meant to go to the Esports World Cup before LA Gorillas didn't accept the invite because they don't want to pay for the flights. To just get them out of the league. I don't think they'll be there next year. I really hope they're not. We need another org that'll actually do something. I know that there's been talks of challengers teams potentially taking over a spot. And as long as they put the effort in and the money, I'm fine with that. But yeah, it was a good challengers tournament. I watched quite a bit of it, especially before the CDL matches started. But Law Gaming did take the dub. Now we're just gonna have to show you this again. So, like I said, 4 teams go through to the Esports World Cup. So it would have been Law Gaming, Omit Brooklyn, FC Black, and Clutch Rain times War, which is Bantz's team. However, things started to get so it was already controversial that Gorillas weren't entering. Flames, Estriel, and DiamondCon are without a team. They're going to miss out on playing for a 1.8 million prize pool. Some of these challengers players as well that'll get to enter, you know, might never get this moment again. It's a huge opportunity for them. I think we're going to have the Esports World Cup every year, hopefully. And if that's the case, hopefully we do get to see these challenger teams enter as well. Because even if you don't win a single match, you will still get $5,000 for your team, which is over $1,000 each. This is where it starts to get controversial, though, because Boston Breach announced their Esports World Cup roster. And it's got Snoopy on, as we'd expect. But it has got 3 players from Omit Brooklyn, Awakening, Purge, and Cammy, which means Prolu is on his own, unfortunately. My first thoughts on this roster is Boston Breach are really bad at search and destroy, so they go and they pick up 3 players for a team that just lost 3 out of 3 search and destroys in a final. Stupid. I'm not sure. I think it's okay. I think it's better than their Major 4 team. I'll say that. I think it's better than the Major 4 team overall, because Major Maniac and Priest, they just weren't doing much. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but this is where it got controversial, because it said that to qualify, you had to have 3 for the challengers teams, they had to have 3 of the same players that was in that team that qualified. Also, there was a qualifier for non-EU and NA teams, which was won by Team Falcons, the Saudis, of course, who've been playing in challenges this year. And to be honest, probably should have been there instead of 5 Media Clan if they didn't get reverse swept in the last chance qualifier. So Prolu was going to be shafted more than anyone else, I think, more than the people on LAG, because they had to get qualified for this. And it was going to go to the Houston Spartans instead, which then 5 Media Clan players like Yerny were not happy about. But so it was going to go to the Spartans. But then, so it's like, well, that's, you know, Pro Luke's getting shafted. Then Fire, top right, he was in the league at one point with Paris Legion. Basically said that he was going to take a break, and everyone assumed Pro Luke's going to join the Spartans, and then the Spartans are going to go and represent at the Esports World Cup. But obviously, Omit Brooklyn, Omit do a lot for the challengers scene, I think. And it was quite disappointing that they'd miss out on their spot that they earned. But then Fire changed his mind, had a U-turn, and then Wiz basically got dropped, who was on the Spartans. And then Omit Brooklyn have announced their roster for the Esports World Cup. And Prolude's there, and so is Fire, Spar, and Hamza, who are on the Spartans. So Omid do get to represent at the Esports World Cup, and so does Prolude. And obviously the other 3 players are on the Boston Breach now. So I think it's worked out well for those guys. Obviously, Wiz has now been dealt the short straw, but ultimately their team didn't qualify for it in the first place. So it was good of the Esports World Cup to allow this to happen as well, I thought. And we've got some more Rostermania. Carolina Royal Ravens obviously dropped Clay a few weeks ago, and they've brought in Ben Beans. Now, I love this move because I really like Beans, obviously representing the UK scene as well. Was Boston's best player and got released. Crazy. Yeah, I know he'll only be on a contract for the Esports World Cup, but it gives him a good chance to show what he can do on a better roster. And also, they have been scrimming Vegas Legion in the last couple of days, and Attach has been streaming it. And I think Ravens won more than Legion. I like this move, to be honest. We'll have to see what happens. You know, they actually, I don't understand. No, the only reason Vegas and Ravens are scrimming is because they're the only 2 teams scrimming at the moment, because other teams are having a break. You know, they don't see the Esports World Cup as big as Champs because you don't get the ring and name on the banner and stuff like that. So some teams are just having a break and then they'll scrim for like 2 weeks beforehand because it's like 2.5 weeks away. They've been scrimming for an extra week. They're actually going to potentially should be in the same group for the Esports World Cup, which means they're going to potentially be playing each other to get through to the last 8. And then obviously if you get through to the last 8, you get more money. I'm going to explain the group stuff shortly. Moving on, we've got G2, Minnesota Rocker / G2. Obviously G2 merged with V1 to have Rocker. So it is G2's COD team. Will we see a change in the name and the city? We don't know. But they are going to represent G2 in Riyadh, and it is Linz, Accuracy, Estrel, and DiamondCon. So I'm happy for Estrel and DiamondCon because they should be there anyway. And then we've got Optic Lamar. It was meant to be gunless, but now Accuracy. I don't mind it. I think the AR duo is a bit slow though, just like it was with Accuracy and gunless. I really like Estrel and Linz. I do think that it's one of the best sub duos outside of the top 4 teams. So I'm really interested to see how that goes. But obviously they'll be wearing G2 jerseys. Optic Texas will be wearing Optic Gaming jerseys. FaZe will be wearing FaZe Clan jerseys. Thieves will be wearing 100 Thieves jerseys. Cloud9 jerseys for the subliners. Obviously the subliners did put out a tweet where we don't know if they're actually going to be the New York subliners next year. Obviously Cloud9 taking over. It might not be New York by the sounds of it. We'll have to see. I'm not going to talk too much about that though until there's more information. Then we actually had another roster change, and this one was really out of the blue. So Johnny put a tweet. There was a tweet saying that Vegas were making a change. Everyone's like, "Oh, what's happening? Could it be Clayster for to join the team?" But I thought, well, that's gonna be a downgrade on Geo, unless Geo moves to a sub. I don't know, but it's actually Fame that's coming for Johnny. And the reason that this happened is because Johnny has got a health issue that he has to take care of. Hopefully he'll be fine for the Black Ops 6 season if he's back on the Legion or not. Because obviously they release all the players because they don't pay players in the off season because they're a poverty org. Fame though. Fame. I don't mind it. I'm glad that he's getting his chance. Only Flames has been shafted now. So Flames and Wiz are probably the 2 people that have been shafted the most now. They've actually put that the Esports World Cup is the 15th to the 18th. I thought it was the 16th to the 18th. Because I thought it was Friday to Sunday, potentially. Because it's single limb, which I'll talk about shortly. But they brought Fame in. I don't mind it. He's played with Attach before on the Rocker last year. Will they be better than they were? Is he an upgrade on Johnny? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. You know, it's kind of hard to tell. We'll just have to see how it goes. But I still think this roster's quite nice. And yeah, obviously big group with the Ravens in as well. Now I did want to bring this up. So this was on Reddit. So it was a post talking about Cloud9, you know, not building their super teams and getting into like just not destroying teams but weakening their own teams. Jack Etienne, who's a co-founder and CEO of Cloud9, has said that they're going to extend all the contracts of the COD team next season, which means that the subliners would be the same team, unless they obviously extend someone's contract and someone wants to buy that player out. I think that was the right decision to keep the roster, unless they could get a clear upgrade on Kismet or Skies, which, I mean, there's Ghosty and a Boozer that you could probably argue would be that. And then, you know, is there any SMGs that they could go on? I mean, there's better players than Kismet, but it's like, would they be able to get them is the question. From the bottom 8 teams, is there? Probably not. So yeah, I think that's good to see, especially because it would just turn into a 3-team league with FaZe, Optic, and Ultra. I think if Hydra left Cloud9, so yeah, that's good. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, there is obviously the thing about the subliners tweet and like what's happening with the subliners and stuff like that. We're not really sure yet what the long-term future of the subliners looks like ultimately. But that's something that I think we'll find out in due course. So I just wanted to bring up the groups here. This is the projected groups for the Call of Duty Esports World Cup in 2.5 weeks. So it's got Optic, Cloud9, Ultra, and Thief. So it's obviously the top 7 is based off where you finished at Champs. And they'll probably just do head-to-head for FaZe, Heretics, and that's actually the only one they need to do. Because LAG haven't gone through, haven't accepted the invite, I still can't believe that's actually a thing. Legion, Ravens, G2, and Breach move up a place in terms of like their CDL ranking, and then obviously Clutch Rain join as an extra challenger team because of LAG. So based off these groups, I think you could kind of tell that Optic, Cloud9, and Ultra should win their groups. By the way, Stallions is FC Black because they've kind of said you can't have 2 FaZe teams, so they've now rebranded to Stallions. Clutch Rain and War as well has on the Esports World Cup website is actually being put down as Team Bant, so we'll have to kind of see what happens there. But Legion Ravens have been scrimming each other because they're the only 2 teams scrimming each other at the moment. That's probably going to be the big game for who goes through. I believe it's going to be you have to win 2 group games to go through. So if you win one and lose one, then you have to win your last one. If you don't, you go home and get $5,000. As a team, not each. So I'm going to do predictions. Obviously, there's no episode next week. The week before, I mean, when it comes out, it'll probably be Tuesday or Wednesday. It'll probably be Wednesday, actually, when that episode of the Roundup comes out. So it'll literally be like 1 or 2 days before the Esports World Cup. I'll do my predictions then. I think, though, like, you can kind of tell, unless there's a major shock, you can kind of tell 7 of the teams that would go through. I would just say Legion and Ravens, if there was no shocks, is the only one where you could, like, maybe 50-50. You don't know who would do that. But we'll have to see. Now, obviously, there would be the top 8, so it would be like winner of Group A versus loser, runner-up of Group B. It would be a best-of-5 single elimination. So if you get eliminated, so say Optic played Surge, Optic beat Surge, Surge go home in 8th, tied 5th. Sorry, it's tied 5th with the other 3 teams that get eliminated. And then it's tied 3rd for the semi-final losers. And then it's the final and 1st and 2nd. A bit like they've been doing that for all of their tournaments in Riyadh, so that I'm aware of. So I can understand why they do that. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to see what happens with the Esports World Cup. It's meant to be a yearly thing. Obviously, there isn't as much hype as there is for Champs for the players. You know, I think I heard Scrappy tell someone that like I can't remember where I heard. I think I heard it on Dope Check, which is Breaking Point's podcast. They said that they bumped into Scrap and were like, oh, the prize pool's good, but if you win champs, you get the ring, your name's on the banner, you're part of like the Call of Duty history books. Whereas, I mean, it's a bit different for the Esports World Cup. However, I think if they do it as a yearly thing, you will tend to see people put Esports World Cup champion in their bios if they win it, of course, which I think is a good thing because you've got people with the X Game gold medals and stuff like that. And obviously, you get a very nice payday. So, moving on now. That's it for Call of Duty. I do think that is it for Call of Duty now. I don't think I've forgotten anything else. So we are going to now talk about CS. It's been a while since we talked about CS. I'll be honest, straight up, I haven't watched much CS in a while. I watched a few matches of the Esports World Cup, and then I went back and, watched the best parts of the event, and I watched the grand finals and stuff like that. So your winners for the Esports World Cup were NAVI, and yeah, it was a best of 3 for the final. So I'm not sure if it's going to be a best of 5 in the COD final. I hope really hope it's at least a best of 7, but we don't know. We'll have to find out. But yeah, well done obviously to NAVI for winning this event. There was 14 teams that took part, and these were your 14 teams. So you had to play. There were 7 games to start with. The losers went to the losers bracket and played best of 1s. I'll show you all this, but these were just the teams that took part. There's teams all across the world, or different continents and stuff like that. But it was NAVI that took $400,000 and won the event. So to start with, we had the round of 14. So as you can see, not really many shocks there. I don't think there's any shocks in terms of the results. So the 7 teams that lost here went to a losers bracket, which was a best of 1. If you lose, you go home. As all these teams did. I think Complexity were quite underwhelming, actually. They were probably the most underwhelming team that didn't get through to at least the finals bracket. So then we had a final between Furia, obviously South America, and the Mongols, obviously of Asia. And it was Furia that took that win. So they went to the finals bracket. Now, the finals bracket was the finals bracket was single elim, just like all the other competitions. So we started with Maus versus Furia, which was a 2-1 win to Maus. Then we had probably arguably the next 2 quarterfinals were arguably the big ones. NAVI versus FaZe. Obviously, FaZe have been on a bit of a downslope recently in CS. Obviously, there's been many times where they've been the best team in the game, but they lose 2-0 to NAVI and go home tied 5th, which they'll be disappointed with, let's be honest. Then we had Team Spirit versus G2, obviously Donk versus Monzi. I think Monzi's probably the best player in CS at the moment, and they did get the job done on Spirit. And I think Spirit have dropped off a little bit as well, to be honest, since CS2 was released. Then we had Vitality versus Virtus Pro. This was going to be a good game, and it was. Virtus Pro took the win. Then we had NAVI versus Maus, and it was NAVI that took the win there and went to the final. And G2 with a comfortable 2-0 over Virtus Pro. Which then leaves us to our final, G2 versus NAVI. If I was to predict this before it started, I would have went... It's close. I would have went 2-1 either way, but I think I would have went 2-1 to... God, I actually don't know. No, I think I would have went G2, actually. I'll be honest. I think I would have went G2. But it was NAVI that took the win. And I mean, NAVI have obviously won events this year. They won PGL Copenhagen, unless I'm mistaken. So yeah, they've won majors already this year. Obviously it's a weird, for CS, I don't know what this feels like. Is it just a major? Because for CS players, it might be just seen as a major. Whereas for COD, it's probably higher. This would be higher than a major, but not the same as champs. So I'm going to show you the ending of map 1, 3, and map 1, 2, and 3. By the way, I just want to say this was a really, really risky play from Navi that ultimately, I mean, if it paid off, we're going to overtime, we're going to second overtime, but obviously that didn't happen.
Isn't a default.
Yeah, this is far more a direct approach.
He rushed, when in doubt.
Bit, lines him up, and knocks down one. Team killing. Oh! It's Malbs! Flattens Navi in his wake in pursuit of taking map one. It's all hanging in Malbs' balance. Throws Navi a knockout blow map one. Taking down teammates, taking down 3 members of Navi, just running and gunning. 25 frags, but those 3 are game winning. Taking the map, Nico confirms it. Malbs justifies his presence in the.
I feel like in the grand finals, you really do not want to lose your map pick, which obviously G2 managed to hold on. And then we went to Nuke. We went to Nuke after that.
Testing JL and Emma, but what a position it is, and he commits to the spray with full confidence. Nearly takes 3. Monacy hamstrung for the rest of this round, and he's got the bomb, but he has to be a playmaker first. How has he lived through that? Nade does chip away at Alexi. Smoke will arrive. You can see Bit on that X-ray. He's knife out, starting to take his place in lobby. So now the pressure comes from every angle. Wonderful. Actually, partners up with Alexi, but that smoke's going to limit their options. Do they have the HE? Yes, they do. HE, spam. Monacy gets it down, staring at the floorboards, but a precise shot from the AWP. It's wonderful, double up. Snacks in a clutch. Hoping they don't push the smoke, but still catches Alexi on the way through. Bit out hot. He's going to be overlooked. Nice angle from him. Is there any way Snacks can find a multi-kill? Bit finds it.
And a pretty convincing win there for Navi on their map pick. You know, compared to the first map, which was, you know, almost went to double overtime. And then we got the final map, the final round of the Esports World Cup for Counter-Strike 2.
And the comeback is well and truly on.
Seems like a direct call. They want to test Wonderful and Bit. Under-equipped, FAMAS, MP9. Worried about everything. No information as to what brackets holds, and now with Snacks lining at this up util. Take the long side.
Well, it looks like the right call, doesn't it? We get all the luxury of the X-ray. If this is the finish.
If. Hunter. He is going to go searching. Where they are, but sitting through the smoke. Bit collects a freebie. And Hunter's death is going to catapult them in towards the undermanned site. Just JL and Ime. What can they do? Oh, they can do a whole lot. That's what they can. They strike in unison. One after the other. Filling the feed. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. NAVI reigns supreme at the Esports World Cup. It's Alexi B. Keeps the curse alive.
And that was a really good round from Navi to win that as well. You know, the smoke it caused loads of problems for G2, and they had to literally, it was do or die for them. Unfortunately, they could not carry on in this tournament. And yeah, honestly, a pretty good tournament. In general, I just think the Esports World Cup has been quite good. Just we've got loads of events. The prize pools are obviously different for each event. I'm obviously not sure as to why that is. I assume it's just more teams and stuff like that. I have been watching some of the Overwatch stuff actually. Main reason is just because I saw Toronto Ultra tweet about it. Obviously, Rainbow Six will be good. With Wolves. You know, Apex has got loads of teams in. But yeah, there's obviously FC24 as well, which, I mean, I don't really watch FC. Like FIFA, eSport, I find it a bit boring. There's obviously Modern Warfare 3. Obviously, Heretics as well. I don't think I mentioned about Heretics obviously being Team Heretics rather than the Miami Heretics. But yeah, like Dota 2 had a $5 million prize pool, which went to the Gaming Gladiators. Um, but yeah, overall, the Esports World Cup does look really good. And it's going to be good when Call of Duty have their time. Who's obviously going to win the trophy, get a lot of money, and become an Esports World Cup champion. Now, also there was the talk of the Esports Olympics, which was by the International Olympic Committee, um, which was voted upon and had more of yeses than nos, which is really good to see. But obviously, because it's like Olympics and that, well, I don't really know the reasons to this, but there's like no FPS games, so there's no Counter-Strike or Call of Duty, and I don't think there's any Valorant either. I've been playing a lot of Valorant recently because it's on PS5 at the moment, like a demo, not a demo, like a beta. It's really good. So yeah, that's quite disappointing to be honest. But I think overall having an Esports Olympics is really good. It's just good for the scene, and the Esports World Cup is really good for the scene as well. And hopefully it's a yearly thing as well. Because I just think that would just be good. Let's be honest. So, I think that is it for this episode. I don't think I've forgotten anything. I might have, but it's too late. I'm not re-recording it because I messed up on the first recording and I had to re-record it. So my throat hurts. That's why I've been having a few drinks. I've really enjoyed this though. And obviously, big congratulations to NAVI for winning the CS Esports World Cup. Well done to Law Gaming, obviously, for winning the Challengers CHAMPS finals. And obviously, we've got all these new rosters ready for the Esports World Cup. No roundup next week. There might still be a YouTube video. You know, I haven't done any like. I'm not doing my Premier League predictions until like a week before the Premier League starts. Just because of transfers and that. And there isn't really any more. There isn't really much Life is Strange news. Either to be honest. So yeah, that is it for this week's roundup. Hopefully you've enjoyed. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Do drop a like and do subscribe. It is really appreciated. And also follow my Twitters, both of them. Obviously my own personal one and the Roundup's Twitter. And yeah, till next time. Bye for now. I don't know why I just did that. That was really cringe, wasn't it? See yous.